I didn't cry when I saw the yellow tape stretched across my front porch. I didn't cry when the young police officer, a kid who looked barely old enough to shave, told me she was gone. I only cried when they let me see her body, and I realized her neck was bare. The necklace, the one I gave her the day before I deployed, was gone. That was the moment the soldier in me woke up, and the father in me died. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. The flight home from the Middle East had been 18 hours of static noise and bad coffee. I had spent the entire time imagining the look on Harper's face when I walked through the door. She was 15 now, that awkward, beautiful age where she was too cool to hug me in public, but would still fall asleep on my shoulder if we watched a movie on the couch. I had a bag full of gifts, a silk scarf from a bazaar, a weird little wooden camel she would laugh at, and a promise that this was the last time I'd leave. I never got to make that promise. When the taxi pulled onto my street, I saw the lights first. Red and blue, flashing against the suburban darkness like a strobe light in a nightmare. My stomach dropped, that specific, cold sensation you get right before a firefight. I paid the driver and ran, ignoring him yelling about the change. My house was swarming. Uniformed officers, a forensics van, neighbors standing in their bathrobes with hands over their mouths. I pushed through the crowd. Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman from next door, grabbed my arm. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a pity that made me want to vomit. "Mason," she whispered. "Oh God, Mason, don't go in there." I pulled away. I hit the police tape and ducked under it. A uniform stepped in front of me, hand on his holster. "Sir, this is a crime scene. Step back." "I live here," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like gravel grinding together. "My family is in there." The cop hesitated. He saw the duffel bag, the boots, the haircut. He knew. He lowered his hand. Mr. Vance, where are they?" "Your wife is in the ambulance. She's in shock. But your daughter?" He trailed off, looking at his boots. "Sir, you really shouldn't." I pushed past him. The front door was open. The hallway was bright, too bright. The first thing I noticed wasn't the body. It was the silence. A house with a dead child in it should scream. It should shake. But it was dead silent. They had her covered with a sheet in the living room. I don't remember walking to her. I just remember the floor feeling unsteady, like the deck of a ship in a storm. I knelt. I pulled the sheet back just enough to see her face. Harper looked like she was sleeping. Her skin was still warm. But then I saw the bruising. Dark, ugly purple marks around her throat. I traced the line of her jaw with a trembling hand. My eyes moved down to her clavicle. The gold chain with the small locket, a locket that held a picture of us, was gone. "Sir." A detective was standing behind me now. He smelled like cheap cologne and stale cigarettes. "I'm Detective Miller." "I'm so sorry." I didn't look up. "Who did this?" "We believe it was a burglary gone wrong," Miller said, his tone practiced, robotic. "We found the back door jimmied open. Drawers ransacked upstairs. It looks like she surprised them. We think she came downstairs for a glass of water, and—" I stood up. The motion was so sudden Miller took a step back. "A burglary?" "Yes, sir. We've had a string of them in the neighborhood." I looked around the living room. The TV was still there. My wife's laptop was sitting on the coffee table. The silverware box on the sideboard hadn't been touched. "They broke in to steal," I said, my voice dangerously low. "But they left the electronics? They left the silver?" "Panic, likely," Miller shrugged. "They killed the girl and ran." I walked to the back door. Miller followed me. "Sir, please, we need to process the scene." I ignored him. I examined the lock. There were scratch marks on the outside, yes, but the wood wasn't splintered. The deadbolt plate wasn't bent. I leaned in close. The scratches were shallow, cosmetic. "This door wasn't forced," I said. "It was unlocked. Or someone had a key." Miller sighed, clearly annoyed now. "Mr. Vance, I know you're a military man. I respect that. But let us do our job. You're grieving. You're seeing things that aren't there." I turned to face him. "I'm a Navy SEAL detective. My job is seeing things people like you miss." Those scratches were made with a screwdriver after the door was opened. And my daughter. I swallowed the lump in my throat. She was strangled. Manual strangulation takes time. It takes hate. A panicked burglar shoots or stabs and runs. He doesn't stand there for 3 minutes squeezing the life out of a teenager. Miller's face hardened. We'll follow the evidence, sir. Why don't you go to the hospital? Your wife needs you. Clara. I had almost forgotten about Clara. I left the house, but I didn't go to the ambulance immediately. I walked to the flower bed right underneath the living room window. The mulch was disturbed. Someone had stood here. I crouched down, scanning the ground with the same intensity one used to scan a ridge for snipers. There, half buried under a petunia leaf. A cigarette butt. I picked it up. It wasn't a Marlboro or a Camel. It was a slender, clove cigarette with a gold band near the filter. A boutique brand. Expensive. I knew exactly who smoked these. My cousin Julian. Julian, who always complained about being broke but wore Italian suits. Julian, who had borrowed money from us 3 times last year. Julian, who claimed he was in Miami for the week. I crushed the butt in my hand, feeling the remaining heat die out against my palm. I looked back at the house, at the sheet covering my baby girl. Miller thought this was a random tragedy. He thought I was just a broken father looking for someone to blame. He didn't know that he was looking at a man who had hunted warlords in the mountains of Afghanistan. He didn't know that I didn't need a badge to find justice. I put the cigarette butt in my pocket. I walked toward the ambulance where Clara was sitting, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. I would play the grieving husband. I would play the broken man. But inside, the switch had been flipped. The mission wasn't over. It had just begun. The funeral was a blur of black umbrellas and hollow condolences. People I hadn't seen in years came out of the woodwork, offering handshakes that felt like limp fish and words that evaporated the moment they hit the air. They said things like, "She's in a better place," and "Time heals all wounds." They didn't understand. Time doesn't heal anything. It just teaches you how to live with the pain, how to carry it like a ruck loaded with stones. I stood by the grave long after the service ended. The dirt was fresh, a dark scar against the manicured green lawn. I kept touching the pocket of my dress uniform, feeling the outline of that clove cigarette butt. It burned against my leg, a constant reminder of the target I had acquired. Mason. The voice was smooth, too smooth. I turned. Julian was standing there, his arms open wide. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, Italian cut, silk lining, shoes so polished you could see the clouds reflecting in them. For a guy who had called me begging for rent money 2 months ago, he looked like he'd just won the lottery. "I can't believe it," Julian said, pulling me into a hug. He smelled of expensive cologne and that faint, sweet scent of clove tobacco. My muscles tensed. It took every ounce of my training not to put him in a chokehold right there in the cemetery. I patted his back hard. I felt something rigid in the inside pocket of his jacket. It was rectangular and heavy. A burner phone? A weapon? Or just a thick stack of cash? "Thanks for coming, Julian," I said, pulling away. I looked him in the eye. He held my gaze for a second, then looked away, scanning the crowd. "Nervous?" "Of course, cuz. Family first," he said. He wiped a tear from his cheek, but his eyes were dry. "I love that girl. I still can't believe. I mean, a burglary? In this neighborhood?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Police say they got in through the back." "The back door?" Julian frowned, scratching his chin. "Damn, that hallway is so dark at night, too. Whoever it was must have tripped over everything." My heart stopped. "What did you say?" I asked, stepping closer. Julian blinked. I said, "The hallway is dark." "How do you know the hallway is dark, Julian?" He froze. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Well, I've been to your house, Mason. I know the layout." "You haven't been to the house in 6 months," I said. "And the hallway light only broke last week. The bulb burned out the day before I flew back. Clara told me on the phone." Julian laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Man, you're stressed. You're grieving. I probably just assumed." Most hallways are dark at night, right? He clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grip surprisingly strong. Look, come by the house later. Clara needs us. I brought a casserole. It's in the car. Sure, I said. We need all the support we can get. That's the spirit. He turned to walk away, pulling his keys out of his pocket. As he did, something fell out with them. A small, white receipt. It fluttered to the grass. Julian didn't notice. He got into his brand-new silver BMW and drove off. I waited until he was out of the gate before I bent down. I picked up the receipt. It was from a pawn shop downtown, dated 2 days before the murder. The item listed was simply, gold scrap, $14K. The rage that hit me then wasn't hot. It was cold. Absolute zero. I drove home in silence. When I walked into the house, it felt different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield. Clara was sitting on the couch, staring at a photo album. She looked small, broken. Julian is coming over, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He wants to help. I know, I said. Let him come. I went upstairs to my office. I didn't have my full kit. I'd left most of my gear at the base, but I had enough. I opened the safe in the closet. Inside was a set of micro cameras I used for surveillance training. They were the size of buttons. I moved through the house like a ghost. One camera in the living room, hidden in the smoke detector. One in the kitchen, behind the clock. One in the hallway, right above the dark spot Julian had mentioned. I connected the feed to my laptop. The image was crystal clear. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. I watched on the screen as Clara opened it. Julian walked in, carrying a glass dish covered in foil. He hugged her, lingering a little too long. It's going to be okay, Clara, he said. We'll get through this. Just like we talked about. Just like we talked about? I sat in my office, headphones on, listening to every breath. Where's Mason? Julian asked, looking up the stairs. He's taking it hard, Clara said. He's in his office. Good, Julian said. His tone changed instantly. The fake sympathy vanished. Did you tell him anything? No, Clara whispered. She looked terrified. Julian, I can't do this. The police asked about the insurance policy today. Shut up, Julian hissed. He grabbed her arm. Don't you dare crack now, Clara. We are in this together. You needed the money just as bad as I did. Remember that. I stared at the screen. The world tilted on its axis. You needed the money just as bad as I did. My wife. My Clara. I took off the headphones. I didn't storm downstairs. I didn't scream. I opened the drawer of my desk and took out my tactical knife. I ran my thumb along the blade, testing the edge. It was sharp enough to split a hair. I put the knife back. Not yet. Death was too easy. I needed to know everything. I needed to know exactly how my daughter died, so I could make sure they felt every single second of pain she felt. I stood up, adjusted my shirt, and put a smile on my face. A soldier's smile. The kind you wear when you're walking into an ambush, but you have a grenade in your pocket. I walked downstairs. Julian. I boomed, walking into the kitchen. I smell lasagna. Julian jumped away from Clara. He flashed that winning smile again. Mason. Yeah, Mama's recipe. Figured you guys needed some comfort food. You're a lifesaver, I said. I walked over to the counter and poured myself a glass of water. I looked at Clara. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was trembling. So, I said, taking a sip. Julian, you were telling me about your business earlier. It must be doing well. That car out front is nice. Oh, you know, Julian shrugged. Ups and downs. Finally hit a lucky streak. A lucky streak, I repeated. That's great. I could use some luck. I'm thinking of hiring a private investigator. The police are too slow. The room went deadly silent. Clara dropped her fork. A pie? Julian asked. Is that necessary? These things take time. Mason, you don't want to waste money. Money isn't an issue, I said, staring him dead in the eyes. I'd spend every last dime I have to find the person who hurt Harper. In fact, I already have a lead. A lead? Clara stammered. Yeah, I lied smoothly. I found a footprint in the flower bed. Size 10. Expensive shoe. The cops missed it, but I didn't. I looked down at Julian's feet. He was wearing size 10 loafers. He shifted his weight, trying to hide them under the table. That's interesting, Julian said, his voice tight. Isn't it? I smiled. I'm going to find them, Julian. And when I do, I'm not going to call the police. I took a bite of the lasagna. It tasted like ash. So, I said, chewing slowly. Who's hungry? The lasagna sat in my stomach like a block of concrete. I watched Julian eat. He ate with gusto, cutting large squares of pasta and cheese, talking about the weather, about some new real estate project he was consulting on. He was performing. I could see it in the way his eyes darted to the window every time a car drove by. Clara wasn't eating. She was pushing her food around her plate, her face pale. Every time Julian laughed, she flinched. It was subtle, a tiny tightening of her jaw, but to me, it was screaming. So, Julian said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. This private investigator. Who is he? Maybe I know him. I know a lot of people in this town. He's out of state, I said, leaning back in my chair. Ex-military. Specifically, intelligence. He doesn't just look for footprints, Julian. He looks for digital ghosts. Julian froze. His fork hovered halfway to his mouth. Digital ghosts. Yeah. Phone records. Deleted texts. GPS data. You know, the things people think they've erased, but never really go away. I watched the blood drain from his face. It was beautiful. That sounds expensive, he stammered. It is, I said. But like I said, I'll pay anything. Julian left 20 minutes later. He claimed he had a late meeting. As soon as his BMW taillights disappeared down the street, I went back to my office. I didn't need a PI. I needed my laptop and the specialized software I'd acquired before leaving the service. I had cloned Julian's phone while he was sitting at my table. It was a simple trick. A small device I'd slipped under the placemat near his seat. While he was busy eating my wife's lasagna, the device had been pulling every packet of data from his phone. I booted up the program. The screen filled with lines of code, then resolved into a user-friendly interface. Contacts, photos, call logs. I went straight to the messages. Most of it was garbage. Gambling sites, debt collectors, random women he was trying to impress. But then I found a thread with a contact saved only as X. The messages were sparse. Brief. Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. Done. Wednesday, 8:15 a.m. He's back. We need to move the item. Wednesday, 9 a.m. Don't text. Meet at the spot. 10 p.m. Wednesday. Today. I looked at the clock. It was 9:15 p.m. The spot. Where was the spot? I switched to the GPS history. Julian's phone had been to a lot of places in the last week. Bars, the casino, my house. But there was one location that stood out. An address in the warehouse district, down by the old shipyards. He had been there 3 times in the last week. Once on the night Harper died. My hands shook as I typed the coordinates into my map. 4200 Industrial Way. I stood up. I changed out of my civilian clothes. I put on black cargo pants, a black hoodie, and soft-soled tactical boots. I didn't take a gun. Not yet. If I got caught with a weapon, the police would lock me up, and the hunt would be over. I took a collapsible baton and a pair of heavy-duty zip ties. Mason. Clara was standing in the doorway. She looked like a ghost. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Where are you going? She asked. For a drive, I said. I need to clear my head. Please don't, she whispered. Stay with me. I'm scared. Scared of what, Clara? I asked softly. She hesitated. For a second, I thought she was going to confess. I thought she was going to break down and tell me everything. But she just shook her head. Nothing. Just memories. I'll be back, I said. Lock the doors. I drove to the warehouse district in my truck, but I parked 6 blocks away. I moved through the shadows, sticking to the alleyways. The air smelled of salt water and rotting fish. This was the part of the city the tourists never saw. The part where things went to disappear. The warehouse was a hulking beast of rusted metal and broken glass. A single light bulb flickered above the side door. I didn't go for the door. I found a drain pipe and shimmied up to the roof. My shoulder burned, an old injury from a deployment in Syria, but I ignored it. Pain was just information. There was a skylight. It was grimy, coated in years of soot, but I could see through a crack in the glass. Below me, the warehouse floor was empty except for a few crates and a table set up in the center. 3 men were standing there. 2 of them were wearing leather jackets with patches I didn't recognize. Gang colors. The 3rd man was Julian. He was pacing back and forth, waving his hands. I couldn't hear what he was saying through the glass, so I pulled a laser microphone from my pocket. I aimed the beam at the coffee cup sitting on the table next to them. The vibrations of their voices against the cup would be translated into sound in my earpiece. Crazy. Julian's voice came through, tinny but clear. He knows something. He's talking about digital footprints, man. He's talking about PIs. Relax, pretty boy, one of the gang members said. He was huge, bald, with a spiderweb tattoo on his neck. Your cousin is just a grunt. He doesn't know how the real world works. He's a SEAL, Julian spat. Do you know what they do? They hunt people for a living. He's one man, the tattooed guy laughed. We run this block. I don't care who runs the block, Julian said. I want the item gone. Melt it down. Smash it. I don't care. Just get rid of it. It'll cost you extra, the 3rd man said. He was smaller, wiry, playing with a switchblade. I already paid you. Julian screamed. I paid you 10 grand to do the job. That was for the job, the wiry man smiled. Disposal is a separate fee, especially when the heat is on. Julian slammed his hand on the table. Fine. I'll get the money. Just give me 2 days. 1 day, the bald man said. Tomorrow night. Same time. Or we mail the necklace to your cousin ourselves. The necklace. My vision blurred. The rage was a physical thing now, a red tide rising behind my eyes. They had it. They had Harper's necklace. Julian nodded, defeated. Okay, tomorrow. He turned and walked out the side door. The gang members laughed, high-fiving each other. I lay on the cold roof, my breath misting in the air. Where did he get $10,000 in cash? And why kill Harper? If it was a robbery, why didn't they take anything else? Why pay a gang 10 grand to kill a 15-year-old girl and steal a necklace worth maybe $500? It wasn't about the necklace. The necklace was just a trophy. The motive was missing. And until I had the motive, I couldn't close the net. I watched the gang members pack up. They left the warehouse, locking the heavy steel door behind them. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I climbed down. I stood in front of the steel door. I touched the cold metal. Tomorrow night. They were expecting Julian to bring money. Instead, they were going to get me. I walked back to my truck. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara. Please come home. I can't be alone. I looked at the text. I looked at the warehouse. I'm coming, I whispered. But I'm bringing hell with me. I'm bringing hell with me. The text to Clara was a promise, but my next move had to be precision, not chaos. The warehouse wasn't just a building. It was a fortress in a wasteland. I sat in my truck, the engine cold, watching the dark silhouette of the structure against the smoggy city sky. The gang members had locked up tight. Steel doors, reinforced windows. But every fortress has a rat hole. I just needed to find it. I didn't go home. I couldn't face Clara. Not with the lie hanging between us like a guillotine blade. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour storage unit on the outskirts of town. Unit 404. Inside was my retirement package. A hard case containing night vision goggles, a suppressed Sig Sauer P226, which I couldn't use legally, but needed for intimidation, tactical gloves, and a lockpicking set. I also grabbed a handful of flexible, high-tensile zip ties and a small, dense breaching hammer. I slept for 3 hours in the truck, waking up at 0300 hours. The witching hour. The time when the human brain is groggiest and the shadows are deepest. I returned to the warehouse district. It was a ghost town. The only sound was the distant hum of the highway and the scuttle of rats in the garbage. I approached the warehouse from the blind side, the wall facing the canal. No cameras here. Just slick, algae-covered brick. I used the drain pipe again, moving slower this time, listening for any vibration, any sound from inside. Silence. I reached the roof and went back to the skylight. It was still dark inside. I used a glass cutter from my kit to make a perfect circle in the grime-covered pane. I attached a suction cup, pulled the glass free, and dropped a small fiber-optic camera down on a wire. The feed on my wrist monitor showed an empty floor. But in the corner, near a stack of shipping crates, a red light blinked. A motion sensor. Amateurs. I rappelled down, avoiding the sensor's cone of vision by sticking to the high steel beams. I moved like a spider, hand over hand, until I was directly above the office module, a prefab room built inside the warehouse floor. This was where the real business happened. I dropped silently onto the roof of the office. I could hear snoring. I slipped down the side, finding the door. Locked. I didn't pick it. I used a shim to slide the latch. It popped open with a soft click. Inside, the air smelled of stale pizza and sweat. A man was sleeping in a chair, feet up on the desk. It was the wiry guy from earlier. The one with the switchblade. The one who asked for the disposal fee. I moved fast. Before he could take a breath, I had him in a rear naked choke. He thrashed, his eyes bulging, but I tightened my grip, cutting off the blood flow to his brain. 5 seconds. 10. He went limp. I didn't kill him. I zip-tied his hands behind his back and his ankles to the chair. I taped his mouth. Then I woke him up with a sharp slap to the face. His eyes snapped open. Terror flooded them instantly when he saw the ski mask I was wearing. He tried to scream, but the tape held. "Not if you understand me," I whispered. My voice was a low rumble. He nodded frantically. "I'm going to take the tape off. If you scream, I will break your collarbone. If you lie, I will break your fingers. Do you understand?" He nodded again. Tears were leaking out of his eyes. I ripped the tape off. He gasped for air. "Please. I don't know anything. I'm just watching the place." "You were here earlier," I said. "With Julian. The guy in the suit." I don't know a Julian." Crack. I snapped his pinky finger. He screamed, a high-pitched wail that I cut off by jamming my gloved hand over his mouth. "That was a lie," I said calmly. "Let's try again. Julian. My cousin. He paid you 10 grand. He was sobbing now, nodding rapidly against my hand. I released him. Yes. Julian. The rich guy. What did he pay you for?" To scare the girl," he blubbered. "Just to scare her. It was supposed to be a robbery. Get in, grab the necklace, smash some stuff, get out. That's all." I froze. "Scare her? Why?" I asked. "Why scare her?" "The insurance," he cried. He said the mom was in on it. They needed the insurance money for the jewelry. He said the girl wouldn't be home. He said the house would be empty. My blood ran cold. The mom was in on it. Clara. But she was home, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She wasn't supposed to be," the guy wailed. "Dante, the big guy," he panicked. "She came downstairs. She started screaming. He didn't mean to do it. He just wanted her to shut up." I leaned back, my mind reeling. Clara knew about the robbery. She knew Julian was sending goons to our house. She thought Harper would be out, maybe at the movies or a friend's house. But Harper had come home early with a migraine. Clara didn't kill her daughter, but she opened the door for the monster who did. "Where is the necklace?" I asked. "Dante has it," he spit out. He didn't trust Julian to pay the rest. He kept it as leverage. He sold it to a fence on 4th Street. Goldie's pawned. "And Dante?" I asked. "Where is he?" He's meeting Julian tomorrow. Here. To get the rest of the money." "No," I said. "He's not." I stood up. The guy looked at me with pleading eyes. "I told you everything. Please, man, just let me go." "I'm not going to kill you," I said. "You're going to be my message." I took a picture of him, tied up, terrified, crying, with my phone. Then I knocked him out cold with a precise strike to the temple. He would wake up with a headache and a story no one would believe. I left the warehouse the way I came in. I sat in my truck, staring at the photo on my phone. The pieces were fitting together, but the picture they made was uglier than I could have ever imagined. Clara, my wife. My partner. She had sold our safety for a gambling debt. She had invited the devil into our home because she needed cash. I drove to Goldie's pawn. It was closed, obviously. Iron bars on the windows. But I didn't need to go inside tonight. I just needed to verify it existed. I parked across the street. I pulled out Harper's school ID, the one I'd found in the trash earlier. I ran my thumb over her smiling face. I know everything now, baby. I whispered to the empty truck. I know who, and I know why. But knowledge wasn't enough. I needed evidence. I needed the necklace. And I needed to look my wife in the eye and see if she had the soul to lie to my face one more time. I started the engine. It was time to go home. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but a light was on in the kitchen. For a second, I just sat there in the truck with my hands on the wheel, watching the curtains. Silhouettes moved behind them. Clara pacing, stopping, pacing again. From the outside, it looked like a normal night in a grieving family's home. Inside, it was a crime scene that just hadn't been processed yet. I walked in, shutting the door softly behind me. Clara spun around, her eyes wide. Mason, where were you? Her voice cracked. I've been calling. My phone died. I lied, slipping it deeper into my pocket. I just drove. Needed air. She studied my face, searching for something. I knew she saw it. The distance, the way my gaze didn't quite land on her. She looked away first. I made coffee, she said. I couldn't sleep. I don't think either of us will be sleeping much for a while, I answered. We sat at the kitchen table. 2 mugs, the same ones we used on quiet Sunday mornings before any of this. Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to hold her mug with both. You talked to the police again? She asked. Yeah, I said. They're still leaning on the burglary theory. They're not going to look past it unless something obvious falls in their laps. Her jaw clenched. So that's it. They just move on. Not me, I said. She looked up at me then, really looked. What does that mean? It means, I said evenly, that I know the difference between a sloppy break-in and a planned operation. And I know when someone inside the house helped. Color drained from her face. She blinked hard, forcing a brittle smile. You're exhausted. You're thinking like a soldier, not. Clara, I cut in quietly. I'm thinking like a father. Silence settled between us, heavy and thick. I watched the way her fingers tightened around the mug, the tremor in her lip. She was cracking, but not yet. Not tonight. I pushed my chair back. I'm going to grab a shower. In my office, I checked the camera feeds again. The recording from earlier, Julian's hissed threats, Clara's whispered panic, was saved to 2 different encrypted drives. Whatever happened next, that insurance policy wasn't going anywhere. I slept in short, broken bursts, images of the warehouse and Harper's bruised neck looping behind my eyes. The next morning, I was parked in front of Goldie's pawn a full half-hour before it opened. In daylight, the shop looked even seedier. Bars on the windows, faded neon sign, a bell dangling above the door that looked like it belonged in a farmhouse. At 10 o'clock on the dot, a man in his 50s shuffled up, keys jingling. He had a belly, gray stubble, and the bored expression of someone who'd seen every kind of sad story walk through his door. He unlocked the gate, then the door. I waited until he flipped the open sign, then went in. Morning, he said without enthusiasm. His name tag said Victor. We buy, sell, trade. No returns. I'm here for something you already bought, I said. He smirked. That's not how this works, buddy. I placed my phone on the counter and slid it toward him. On the screen was a blown-up photo from the warehouse. The wiry gang member, tied to the chair, eyes wide with terror. Victor's eyes narrowed. You a cop? No, I said. I'm worse. He stared at me for a long beat. Something in my face made him look away first. What do you want? He muttered. 2 days ago, a man came in here with a gold necklace, I said. 14-carat, delicate chain, small oval locket with a tiny dent near the hinge. You paid him for scrap. Victor chewed his lip. I'd taken a lot of gold. I leaned in close. This one was attached to the neck of a 15-year-old girl when she was strangled in her own living room. His bravado crumbled. He swallowed hard. It's already in the melt bin, he said quietly. But we don't melt every day. Too expensive to fire the furnace up. I bag items and wait till the bin's worth it. Show me. He hesitated for half a second too long. I reached across the counter and grabbed his shirt, yanking him forward until the edge dug into his ribs. Victor, I'm giving you a kindness right now you don't deserve. Don't waste it. He nodded frantically. I let go. He disappeared into the back. I could hear him digging through metal, plastic clinking, something heavy scraping concrete. Seconds stretched. Every one of them felt like a lifetime. Then he came back with a clear Ziploc bag full of jewelry, tangled chains, mismatched earrings, dented rings. He dumped it gently on a black velvet tray. There, he said. That's everything from the last 3 days. My fingers moved on their own. Years of training used for something I never imagined. Sifting through strangers' discarded treasures to find the last thing my daughter wore. I saw it before I touched it. The chain was twisted around a cheap charm bracelet. I untangled it carefully, laying it flat on the velvet. The locket was smudged, but the tiny dent on the hinge was exactly where Harper had dropped it against the kitchen tile last year. My chest clenched so hard it felt like a heart attack. How much did you pay for it? I asked, still staring at the necklace. Couple hundred, tops, Victor said. Guy needed quick cash. Real twitchy. Did you get cameras? I asked. He snorted. Course. Everyone tries to rob a pawn shop eventually. Then we're going to watch them. I followed him to the back room. A dusty monitor sat on a metal shelf, wired to a cheap DVR system. He rewound to the date on the receipt I'd picked up at the cemetery. There, he said, jabbing a nicotine-stained finger at the screen. The footage showed the interior of the shop. A bell chimed as the door opened. The wiry gang member walked in, hoodie up, head down. He unloaded the necklace and 2 rings onto the counter. Victor from 2 days ago weighed them, nodded, handed over a stack of bills. Can you zoom that? I asked. He adjusted the controls. The resolution was terrible, but it was enough. On the far edge of the frame, through the front window, a silver BMW idled at the curb. Tinted windows, polished chrome. Pause, I said. The camera caught just enough of the driver's profile as he leaned forward to check the mirror. Slick back hair. Designer sunglasses. The side of his smug, angular face. Julian. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the screen. I need a copy of this footage, I said. Victor hesitated. If this goes to court, they're going to know it came from here. I don't want. I slid a thick wad of cash from my pocket and placed it on the table. $100 bills. The same amount Julian had paid to end my daughter's life. This covers the necklace, the footage, and your sudden case of amnesia if anyone comes asking. He stared at the money, then at me. He nodded slowly. You never came in here. Right, I said. Never. 15 minutes later, I walked out with Harper's necklace in my palm and a USB drive in my pocket. I sat in the truck and just held the locket. The metal was cold at first, then warmed against my skin. With a thumbprint, the hinge popped open. Inside was the tiny picture we'd taken in a photo booth at the mall, her making a goofy face, me pretending to be annoyed. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The well was past empty. What I felt now was something harder, heavier. Purpose. When I got home, Clara was at the sink, rinsing a plate that didn't need rinsing. Just moving, staying busy. Like if she stopped moving, the truth would catch her. She turned when she heard the door. You were out early. Yeah, I said. Had something to pick up. I walked into the kitchen and placed the necklace gently on the counter between us. Clara's eyes dropped to it. The plate slipped from her hands and shattered in the sink. Her face went white. Her lips parted, a soundless gasp leaving her throat. One hand flew to her mouth. The other gripped the edge of the counter like she might fall. How? How did you? She whispered. I watched every micro-expression. The recognition. The horror. The guilt. Pawn shop on 4th, I said quietly. Turns out someone sold our daughter's necklace for scrap metal. Tears flooded her eyes immediately. They weren't the clean tears of a grieving mother. They were messy, frantic, panicked. Mason. I stepped closer, my voice barely more than a breath. Don't say anything yet. Not one word. Because from this moment on, everything you say can either save you or bury you. Her shoulders shook. She stared at the necklace like it was a live grenade. I picked it up and let it dangle from my fingers, the locket spinning slowly. Question is, I said, my heart pounding, were you standing on my side of this counter that night? Or theirs? She broke. Clara's knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of the counter, eyes locked on the necklace swinging between my fingers like a pendulum. Her voice came out as a dry rasp. She swallowed hard. Mason, please. Start talking, I said quietly. All of it. No edits. She shook her head, tears spilling over. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Her gaze bounced from my face to the necklace and back. For a second, I saw the woman I married. The one who used to dance in the kitchen at midnight, hair a mess, laughing at nothing. Then I saw the woman in the camera footage, whispering with my cousin about insurance and secrets. I was going to tell you, she whispered. When? I asked. Before or after you cashed the check? She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Clara? I stepped closer, keeping my voice steady, almost gentle. Explain the version of this where our daughter doesn't end up in the ground. She sank into a chair like her legs had given out. Her hands covered her face, shoulders shaking. Julian came to me months ago, she said through her fingers. He knew about the cards. The debt. I thought I was hiding it. But he saw the statements when he came over one night. He said he could help. Help, I repeated. The word tasted bitter. That what we're calling it? She dropped her hands. Her eyes were bloodshot, but there was a defiant edge under the guilt now. A cornered animal. You were never home, she snapped suddenly. You were always in some desert or on some ship or God knows where. I was alone, Mason. Every bill, every emergency, every time something broke, her voice shook. You think the Navy pays enough to keep up with all of this? I was drowning. So you reached for a brick instead of a life vest, I said. Keep going. Julian said he knew some guys, she continued, staring at a spot on the table. They could stage a break-in, smash some things, grab some jewelry, make it look real. We'd file a claim, pay off the cards, start over. Clean. You gave strangers a key to our house. They weren't strangers, she said quickly. He said they were professionals, that they just wanted the payout. No one would get hurt. You weren't even supposed to be in the country. Harper was supposed to be at Morgan's that night. My stomach twisted. But she wasn't. Her face crumpled. She came home early. She texted me that her stomach hurt and she didn't feel like staying over. I thought she'd still be out when they came. I thought I had time to call it off. Did you? I asked. Call it off. I tried. She nodded desperately. I called Julian. He didn't pick up. I texted. He said it was already in motion, that they were just going to grab the stuff and leave. He told me to calm down. You didn't call the police. Her eyes flashed. And say what, Mason? Hi, my cousin hired some guys to rob us for the insurance money, but now I've changed my mind. They would have locked me up. Locked us both up. Our life, your career gone. So you gambled with hers instead. The words landed like a hammer. She folded over, pressing her forehead to the table, sobbing now. Ugly, choking sobs. I never wanted her hurt, she kept repeating. I swear to God, I never wanted her hurt. I let her cry. The old me, the husband version, would have gone to her, put a hand on her back, told her they'd figure it out. That version of me had been buried with Harper. When did you know she was dead? I asked. She lifted her head slightly, mascara streaked down her cheeks. The cops called me at work. They said there'd been an incident. When they said burglary, I knew. I knew exactly what it was. I knew who did it. And I knew it was my fault. I believed that part. I could see the way the guilt had hollowed her out. But remorse after the fact is a luxury. Harper didn't get that luxury. You and Julian, I said. How deep does it go? She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? Don't insult me, I replied. Money, secrets, anything else I should know before I decide what happens to you. Her jaw clenched. Shame flickered across her face, then settled. We kissed once, she admitted, voice barely audible. After one of our planning meetings. I was drinking. He knows exactly what to say. I stopped it. It never went further. I stared at her. You conspired with my cousin to rob our house. You handed over a key. You almost slept with him, and you're asking me to believe you drew the line at kissing. I made a mistake, she said, the edge back in her tone. 1,000 stupid, awful mistakes. But I didn't strangle our daughter. I didn't put my hands on her throat. No, I said. You just opened the door and set the table. She winced. Silence wrapped around us again. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower started up, normal life chugging along a few feet from our apocalypse. What are you going to do? She asked finally, voice small. Turn me in? Tell them everything. I thought about it. About walking into the police station, dropping the necklace and the pawn footage and the warehouse confession on the detective's desk. Watching them carry Clara away in cuffs. It would have been easy. Too easy. No, I said. Her head snapped up, confusion warring with relief. No. You're going to set the rest of the trap, I said calmly. You and Julian both. She shook her head, trembling. Mason, I can't. You don't understand what these people. I've seen worse men than Dante and his little crew evaporate off the planet. I cut in. Don't talk to me about what they're capable of. Talk to me about what you're capable of. I'm not you, she whispered. I don't have your switch. You don't need my switch, I said. You already proved that. All you have to do now is exactly what you're best at. Her eyebrows knit. What's that supposed to mean? Lying, I said simply. You're going to invite Julian over. You're going to act broken and scared and desperate. You're going to tell him I'm falling apart, that I'm talking about going to the cops, that I mentioned some new evidence I found. She was shaking her head before I even finished. He'll run. He'll disappear. We'll never see him again. No, I said. He won't. Because you're also going to tell him I'm clinging to one thing. A story. You're going to say Harper kept a diary. A hidden one. Somewhere in the house. Her eyes widened. She didn't, I know, I said. But he doesn't. And neither do the men he hired. All they'll hear is loose end. Men like that hate loose ends. You're going to get killed, Clara said, voice rising. This isn't a mission, Mason. This is our life. Our family is already. Our family, I interrupted softly, was something you put on the table when you picked up the phone and called Julian. You don't get to hide behind that word now. She stared at me, breathing hard, hands balled into fists on her lap. What if I say no? She asked. I studied her. The woman who had shared my bed, my name, my child. The woman who had also shared my bank statements and my cousin's conspiracies. Then I tell the police everything, I said. Every recording, every message, every detail. Julian goes down. You go down. What phrases to use that would trigger Julian's paranoia without tipping him off that I was the one pulling the strings now? I told her to mention the word diary twice. To say Harper wrote everything down. To make it sound like an accident, like she'd let the word slip. He won't believe me forever, she said when I finished. He's not stupid. He only has to believe you long enough to walk through the door, I said. She looked at the necklace again. What about this? I closed my fist around it. This stays with me. I turned to leave the kitchen, then paused. Clara. She looked up. You're going to get your day, I said. In court or in this house. That part depends on you. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Whatever she wanted to say died on her tongue. I walked back to my office, the necklace imprinting a cold circle in my palm. On the monitor, the house cameras showed Clara alone at the table, staring at her phone with an expression that was equal parts horror and calculation. Good. Fear makes people honest. But desperation makes them useful. By tonight, Julian would be sitting in our living room again. This time, I wouldn't be pretending to smile. The dining room table was set with the good china. The silver candlesticks, the heavy linen napkins, the crystal wine glasses. It all looked like a page out of a magazine. But under the surface, The air was so thick with tension you could choke on it. I sat at the head of the table. Clara sat to my right, wearing a black dress that hung loosely on her frame. She looked like a porcelain doll that had been dropped and glued back together wrong. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. The doorbell rang. "Showtime," I whispered. Clara flinched, but she stood up. "I'll get it." I listened to her footsteps in the hall, the creak of the front door, the murmur of voices. Then, Julian's laugh. It was a confident sound, rich and easy. The sound of a man who thinks he's won. They walked into the dining room. Julian was wearing a charcoal suit this time, no tie. He carried a bottle of wine like a peace offering. "Mason," he beamed, extending a hand. "Good to see you, cousin. You're looking intense." "Just focused," I said, gripping his hand. I squeezed, just a little harder than necessary. His smile faltered for a microsecond before I let go. "Thanks for coming on such short notice." "Anything for family," he said, taking his seat. He poured the wine without asking. Clara sounded upset on the phone. "Said you had some news?" I watched him take a sip. He was relaxed. He had no idea that 5 hours ago, I was holding the necklace he sold. He had no idea his partner in the warehouse was currently zip-tied to a chair in a basement across town, waiting for the police I'd anonymously tipped off. "News," I repeated. "I guess you could call it that." "Clara, serve the roast." Clara brought the platter from the kitchen. Her hands were trembling so badly the meat fork clattered against the porcelain. "Easy there," Julian said, reaching out to steady her arm. "You okay, Clara?" She pulled away from his touch like he was radioactive. "I'm fine. Just tired." We ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sound was the scrape of silverware against plates. I cut my meat methodically. Slice. Saw. Slice. "So," Julian said, clearing his throat. "Clara mentioned you were thinking about evidence?" "Yeah," I said, not looking up. I was going through Harper's room again. You know how teenagers are. They hide things. Julian stopped chewing. "Hide things." "Secrets," I said. "Journals. Notes. Digital backups." I looked up then, locking eyes with him. "Did you know Harper had a smartwatch? One of those new ones with the voice recorder function." Julian's face didn't change, but his pupils dilated. A physiological response to threat. "I didn't know that. I thought the police cataloged all her electronics." "They missed one," I lied. "She must have taken it off before it happened. Maybe threw it under the bed. Or maybe the killer didn't notice it on her wrist because it looks like a fitness band." I took a slow sip of wine. "I found a sync log on her laptop today. It shows an audio file uploaded to the cloud at 9:42 p.m. on the night she died. 9:42 p.m. The exact time of death according to the coroner." Julian set his glass down. A few drops of red wine sloshed onto the white tablecloth. It looked like blood spatter. "That's incredible," he said. His voice was tight. "Have you listened to it?" "Not yet," I said. "The file is encrypted. I have a buddy at the NSA running a brute force program on the password. Should crack it by tomorrow morning." I leaned forward. "Imagine that, Julian. Her last moments. Recorded forever. If she said a name, or if the microphone picked up a voice, game over." Julian stared at me. The charm was gone. The smooth cousin was gone. In his place was a man doing mental calculus on his own survival chances. "You should give that to the police," he said quickly. "Immediately. Don't mess around with encrypted files, Mason. You might corrupt it." "I trust my guy more than the police," I said. "Besides, I want to hear it first. I want to know who was in this house." I looked at Clara. She was staring at her plate, tears sliding silently down her nose. She was playing her part perfectly, the terrified, broken mother. "Clara," Julian said sharply, "you think this is a good idea? Mason playing detective?" Clara looked up. Her eyes met his. "He found the diary too, Julian." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Diary," Julian whispered. "The written one," Clara said, her voice shaking. "Under the floorboard in her closet. She wrote about everything. About people she was afraid of." This was the second lie I'd planted. A 1-2 punch. First the digital threat, then the physical one. Julian looked like he was going to be sick. He pushed his chair back. I need to use the restroom. Down the hall, I said. First door on the left. Try not to trip in the dark. He froze. He looked at me, searching for a double meaning, but I kept my face blank. He hurried out of the room. As soon as he was gone, I pulled my phone out. I opened the app connected to the camera I'd hidden in the bathroom. On the screen, Julian was pacing. He was sweating profusely. He pulled out his phone. His fingers flew across the screen. I switched to the audio feed. Pick up, you idiot, he hissed. What? A gruff voice answered. Dante, the gang leader. We have a problem, Julian whispered, checking the door. The soldier found a backup. A recording. And a diary. He knows. He knows what? Dante growled. He knows someone was in the house. He's going to listen to the audio tomorrow. We have to move. Tonight. You said this was clean. Dante shouted. Just shut up and listen. Julian snapped. He keeps the evidence in his office safe. We need to burn it. All of it. Tonight. Before he cracks that file. I'm not coming to a SEAL's house, man. That's suicide. He's not a SEAL right now. Julian hissed. He's a grieving father. He's a wreck. He's drinking wine and crying. The house is isolated. We come in. We torch the office. We make it look like an electrical fire. Accident. End of story. I want 20 grand more, Dante said. Fine. Whatever. Just get the crew. Meet me at the old quarry in an hour. We'll prep there. Julian hung up. He splashed water on his face, took a deep breath, and practiced his smile in the mirror. It was a ghastly sight. He walked back into the dining room. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, he said. Just stomach bug. Listen, Mason, Clara. I hate to eat and run, but I'm not feeling great. I should probably head home. Of course, I said. Health comes first. I walked him to the door. He paused on the porch. I hope you find what you're looking for in that file, Mason. Really? Oh, I will, I said. I promise. I watched him drive away. As soon as he turned the corner, the facade dropped. Clara, I said, turning back to the house. Go to your sister's. Now. Mason, go, I ordered. Take the car. Don't stop until you get there. Do not call me. Do not answer your phone. What are you going to do? She asked, grabbing her purse. I'm going to welcome our guests. I waited until her taillights faded. Then I went to the garage. I didn't need the pistol for this. I needed tools that created fear. I grabbed a coil of high-test fishing line, a bag of flour, a handful of chemical glow sticks, and my tactical tomahawk. They were coming to burn my house down. They were coming to erase the memory of my daughter. I wasn't going to let them burn it. I was going to turn it into a haunted house. And I was going to be the ghost. The house was a tomb, silent and waiting. I moved through the rooms with the precision of a surgeon, setting the stage. I unscrewed the light bulbs in the hallway until they flickered but didn't die, creating shadows that danced and jumped. I scattered the flour in a thin, almost invisible layer across the hardwood floor of the entryway. Anyone walking through would leave a trail. I took the glow sticks, green, chemical green, and cracked them, tossing them under the furniture in the living room. It gave the room an eerie, radioactive underglow, like something out of a nightmare. Then I went to the garage. I found the main breaker box. I didn't cut the power. Not yet. I rigged a tripwire with the fishing line across the back door, the same door they had used the first time. When the door opened, the line would pull a pin I'd set in the breaker box, plunging the house into absolute darkness instantly. Panic is a weapon. Darkness is its ammunition. I retreated to the crawl space access in the pantry. It was a tight fit, even for me, but it gave me a view of the kitchen through the slatted vent. I had my tomahawk. I had my night vision goggles. And I had the one thing they didn't, the home field advantage. I waited. Time in a stakeout moves differently. You don't measure it in minutes. You measure it in heartbeats. 1 hour passed. Then 2. At 2:15, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel down the street. They had parked far away, just like I did. Smart, but not smart enough. The back door handle jiggled. I held my breath. Click. The lock disengaged. They had the key Clara gave them. Of course. The door creaked open. Snap. The fishing line pulled taut. The breaker box in the garage clanged. The house went black. What the hell? A voice hissed. It was Dante. I recognized the gravelly tone from the phone call. Relax, Julian whispered, his voice trembling. It's just a fuse. Old wiring. Use your flashlights. Beams of light cut through the darkness, sweeping across the kitchen. I watched through the vent as 3 figures moved in. Dante, the wiry guy I'd interrogated, looking worse for wear, sporting a heavy bandage on his finger, and Julian. Julian looked terrified. He was clutching a gas can like a lifeline. Okay, Julian whispered. Office is upstairs. Second door on the right. Let's go. Fast. Wait, Dante said. He stopped, shining his light on the floor. Look. The flower. Footprints, Dante said. Someone walked here recently. Barefoot. So. Julian snapped. Mason lives here. Let's go. No. Dante said, swinging his light around. These are small. Too small for a seal. He traced the footprints with his beam. They led from the kitchen, directly to the pantry door where I was hiding. My grip tightened on the tomahawk handle. Maybe it's the wife, the wiry guy squeaked. She's gone, Julian said. I saw her leave. Check the pantry, Dante ordered. I shifted my weight. If they opened the door, I'd have to drop 2 of them before they could fire a shot. I calculated the angles. Dante first. He was the biggest threat. Then the wiry guy. Julian would freeze. The wiry guy reached for the pantry handle. Suddenly, a noise erupted from upstairs. A high-pitched, digital chirp. Beep, beep, beep. It was Harper's smartwatch alarm. I had set it to go off at 2:20. I'd left it on the desk in my office, right next to the diary. The 3 men froze. What is that? Julian whimpered. The recording, Dante said, his eyes wide. He said he had a recording. It sounds like a bomb, the wiry guy said, backing away. It's an alarm, you idiots. Julian hissed. It's coming from the office. That's where the evidence is. Come on. They turned away from the pantry and headed for the stairs. I exhaled slowly. I waited until their footsteps were heavy on the landing above. Then I pushed the pantry door open silently. I slipped into the kitchen. I moved to the bottom of the stairs. I could hear them banging around in my office. Where is it? Julian was frantic. He said it was in the safe. The safe is locked, genius. Dante yelled. We need to blow it. No explosions. Julian screamed. Just pour the gas. Burn the whole room. And burn the evidence with the safe? Dante argued. Fire won't melt a steel safe, Julian. If the drive is inside, it survives. Then we take the safe. It weighs 300 pounds. They were arguing. Distracted. Perfect. I pulled the first surprise from my pocket. A flashbang grenade. Not military issue. I couldn't get those anymore, but a homemade version I'd cobbled together from magnesium powder and a modified firework casing. It wouldn't kill them, but in a confined space like a hallway, it would feel like the wrath of God. I pulled the pin. I lobbed it up the stairs. It clattered against the banister. Grenade. Dante screamed. Boom. The flash was blinding, even from downstairs. The sound was a physical blow. I heard screams, the thud of bodies hitting the wall. I pulled my night vision goggles down. The world turned green and crisp. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Silent. Lethal. At the top of the landing, smoke swirled. The wiry guy was on his knees, clutching his ears, screaming. I didn't stop. I kicked him in the chest, sending him sprawling back into the bedroom. He was out of the fight. Dante was stumbling, trying to raise a pistol. He couldn't see. He was firing blindly into the wall. Bang! Bang! Plaster exploded next to my head. I closed the distance. I grabbed his gun arm, twisting it until the bone snapped. He roared. I swept his leg, driving him into the floor. He hit hard. I followed up with a hammer fist to his jaw. Lights out. That left Julian. He was standing in the doorway of my office, the gas can at his feet. He was blinking, tears streaming from his eyes, trying to clear his vision. He held a lighter in one shaking hand. "Stay back," he screamed at the smoke. "I'll do it. I'll burn it all." I stepped out of the smoke. To him, I was just a shadow, a monster in the dark with glowing green eyes. "You can't burn the truth, Julian," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. He squinted. "Mason, put the lighter down." "No," he shrieked. He flicked the lighter. The flame sparked. "I didn't mean to. It was an accident. She wasn't supposed to be there. But she was," I said, taking a step forward. "And you paid for it." "It was Clara," he yelled. "She wanted the money. It was her idea." "I know," I said. "I know everything." He looked at the gas can. He looked at me. He made a choice. He kicked the gas can over. Fuel glugged out, soaking the carpet. He lowered the lighter. "If I go down," he sneered, "I'm taking this whole house with me." He wasn't bluffing. He was desperate enough to die. I had maybe 2 seconds before he dropped that flame. I couldn't reach him in time, but I didn't have to reaching him. I threw the tomahawk. It wasn't aimed at his head. It was aimed at his hand. The blade spun through the air. It struck his wrist with a sickening thud. Julian screamed. The lighter flew out of his hand, spinning through the air. It landed in the puddle of gasoline. Whoosh! The room erupted in fire. The fireball was instantaneous. It roared to life, a hungry orange beast that consumed the oxygen in the hallway. Julian scrambled backward, screaming, his hand cradled to his chest. The smell of burnt hair and gasoline mixed with the metallic tang of blood. The fire suppression system I'd installed 2 years ago, specifically for the server room in my office, triggered. But I hadn't filled the tanks with water. I'd filled them with halon gas. Hisses. The gas dumped into the room, starving the fire instantly. The flames died as quickly as they had been born, leaving only choking smoke and darkness. Julian was coughing, retching on the floor. "I can't see. I can't see." I walked through the smoke. My night vision cut through the haze. I saw Dante groaning on the floor, trying to reach for his gun with his good hand. I stepped on his wrist. Crunch. He howled. I leaned down, grabbing him by his tactical vest. "You came to my house," I whispered, my voice distorted by my gas mask. "You walked on the floor my daughter learned to crawl on." I dragged him to the window. It was a 3-story drop to the concrete patio below. I smashed the glass with the hilt of my tomahawk. "Fly," I said. I didn't throw him. I just held him over the edge. He scrabbled at my arm, terrified. "Please. No. I'll tell you everything. I'll testify." "I don't need your testimony," I said. "I have your boss." I pulled him back in and zip-tied him to the radiator. He was sobbing now, a broken man. I turned to Julian. He had crawled into the corner of the office. He was curled into a fetal ball, rocking back and forth. The tomahawk had done exactly what I intended. It hadn't severed the hand, but the blunt force trauma had shattered the bones in his wrist. He was useless. I ripped off my gas mask. The air was still acrid, but breathable. "Look at me," I commanded. Julian looked up. His face was streaked with soot and tears. "Mason, please. I'm family. We're blood." "Blood?" I laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. "You spilled my blood to pay a gambling debt. You strangled my blood because she recognized you." "I didn't want to," he wailed. She woke up. She saw me. She said, "Uncle Julian, is that you?" I panicked. I just wanted her to be quiet. "So you squeezed until she stopped moving." He nodded, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I stopped the recording. "That's all I needed," I said. "What?" Julian blinked, confused. "The confession," I said. "Clear. Uncoerced. Admissible. You recorded me? I've been recording you since the funeral, Julian. Every lie. Every phone call. Every step." I walked over to him. I didn't hit him. I didn't need to. He was already destroyed. "The police are 5 minutes away," I said. "I called them when your car turned onto the street. I told them there was an active home invasion." Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with every second. "They're going to find you here," I continued. "With gasoline. With a weapon. With a confession. Clara! Julian shrieked. Clara is in on it. She gave me the key. She planned it. I know, I said. And she's going to prison too. But you? You're going to a special kind of hell. The kind where they put child killers. The blue and red lights washed over the room, illuminating the wreckage. The front door burst open downstairs. Police. Show us your hands. I walked to the landing. I raised my hands slowly. Upstairs. I yelled. They're upstairs. Officers swarmed the stairs. They found Dante tied to the radiator. They found the wiry guy unconscious in the bedroom. And they found Julian, broken and weeping in the corner of my office. Detective Miller was the last one up. He looked at me, then at the carnage. He saw the tomahawk on the floor. He saw the tactical gear I was wearing. Mr. Vance, he said, breathless. What happened here? They came back to finish the job, I said calmly. I stopped them. Miller looked at Julian. Is that your cousin? No, I said. That's the man who murdered my daughter. I didn't attend the bail hearing. I didn't need to. I knew the judge, the prosecutor, and the evidence. The system, slow and grinding, had finally caught up to the speed of my vengeance. 3 months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. People love a tragedy, especially one involving a soldier, a murdered teenager, and a family betrayal. They lined the benches like vultures waiting for scraps. I sat in the front row, wearing my dress blues. My chest was heavy with medals, but the only weight I felt was the empty space beside me where Harper should have been. Julian sat at the defendant's table. He looked small. The designer suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. His arm was in a cast. He wouldn't look at me. Clara was there too, but she wasn't at the defense table. She was in the witness box. She had taken a plea deal, testimony against Julian and the gang in exchange for a reduced sentence. She looked aged, gray, her beauty eroded by guilt. Mr. Vance, the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named D.A. Thorne, paced in front of the jury. Can you tell the court what happened on the night of November 14th? Julian's lawyer, a slick man who cost more per hour than I made in a month, stood up. Objection. My client has already stated he was coerced. He was under duress. Overruled, the judge said. Judge Harrison was a man of iron. Retired Marine Corps, no nonsense. He stared at Julian with eyes that had seen war. The trial dragged on for 2 weeks. The forensic evidence was damning. The warehouse tapes, the pawn shop footage, the confession in my burning office, it was all laid out. Julian's defense was crumbling. His lawyer tried to paint him as a victim of the gang's extortion, claiming Dante forced him to open the house. But I was saving the final nail for the end. On the last day, I took the stand. Mr. Vance, Thorne asked, you claimed during the investigation that there was a digital recording from your daughter's smartwatch. Is that correct? The courtroom went silent. Julian's head snapped up. He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. He remembered the lie I told at the dinner table. He thought I had bluffed him into confessing. Yes, I said clearly. And did this recording actually exist? Thorne asked. Or was it a ruse to entrap the defendant? Julian's lawyer smirked, ready to pounce on the illegal entrapment angle. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small, battered USB drive. It wasn't a ruse, I said. The air left the room. Julian's lawyer froze. Julian turned the color of ash. I lied to my cousin about finding it that night. I continued, looking directly at the jury. I told him I had it to make him panic. But I didn't actually find the backup server until 3 days after his arrest. It was in a cloud account Harper shared with her best friend for uploading dance videos. I handed the drive to the bailiff. This is the audio from that night, I said. It auto-synced when her heart rate spiked above 140 beats per minute. Judge Harrison nodded to the clerk. Play it. The speakers in the courtroom crackled. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of a heartbeat. Fast. Terrified. Then, a door opening. Footsteps. Who's there? Harper's voice. Small. Sleepy. Silence. Mom? Dad? More footsteps. Heavy boots on hardwood. Oh, thank God. Uncle Julian? Is that you? The courtroom gasped. One of the jurors covered her mouth. Julian started shaking his head violently. No, no. The audio continued. What are you doing here? Harper asked. Her voice trembled. Who are those men? Just go back to sleep, Harper, Julian's voice. Clear as day. Go back to sleep and you won't get hurt. You're wearing gloves, Harper whispered, the realization hitting her. You have Mom's key. Grab her. A deep voice, Dante. A scuffle. A scream, cut short. Uncle Julian, please. I won't tell. I promise. She saw me. Julian's voice again. Panic now. She saw my face, Dante. She knows. Then fix it. No. I can't. Fix it, or we leave you here with the body. Heavy breathing. Whimpering. I'm sorry, Harper. I'm so sorry. Just close your eyes. Then, the sounds of struggle. Choking. The heartbeat monitor beeping faster. 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 And then, beep. Silence. The recording ended. For 10 seconds, nobody breathed. The silence in that courtroom was heavier than the silence in my house the night I came home. Then, chaos. You monster. A woman in the gallery screamed. Julian was sobbing, banging his head against the table. I didn't want to. They made me. Judge Harrison slammed his gavel, but he didn't look angry. He looked disgusted. Order, he roared. Order, or I will clear this court. He looked at Julian. The look was a death sentence. The jury has heard the evidence, Harrison said. His voice was ice. We will recess for deliberation. They didn't need long. 45 minutes later, they were back. We find the defendant, Julian Vance, guilty on all counts. The foreman read. First-degree murder. Conspiracy to commit burglary. Insurance fraud. Julian slumped forward. His lawyer didn't even pat his back. Then the foreman looked at Clara. We find the defendant, Clara Vance, guilty of conspiracy to commit burglary and accessory to manslaughter. Clara didn't cry. She just looked at me. I held her gaze. There was no hate left in me. Just a vast, empty desert where my life used to be. Sentencing will be carried out immediately, Judge Harrison said. He wasn't wasting time. He looked at Julian. Mr. Vance, you betrayed your blood for money. You murdered a child who trusted you to save your own skin. There is no hole deep enough for you, but I will do my best to find one. Life in prison, Harrison said, without the possibility of parole, plus 50 years for the conspiracy charges, to be served consecutively. He turned to Clara. Mrs. Vance, your greed opened the door. Your silence kept it open. You will serve 15 years in a federal penitentiary. The gavel banged. A final, wooden period at the end of a sentence written in blood. I stood up. I didn't look at Julian as the bailiffs dragged him away, kicking and screaming. I didn't look at Clara as she was handcuffed, her head bowed in shame. I looked at the empty chair beside me. We got them, baby, I whispered. Mission accomplished. I walked out of the courtroom. The press was waiting, a wall of cameras and microphones. I walked right through them, silent, a ghost passing through a world of noise. I had one last stop to make. I didn't go home after the sentencing. Home didn't exist anymore. The house was just lumber and drywall soaked in memories I couldn't touch without feeling like I was breathing smoke again. So I drove to the only place that still felt honest. The cemetery was quiet. Late afternoon lights stretched long shadows over the grass, turning the headstones into rows of muted gray. I parked under the big oak tree at the edge of the lot and just sat for a minute, hands locked around the steering wheel, waiting for the storm in my chest to pick a direction. It didn't. So I forced the door open and walked anyway. Harper's grave was easy to find. I didn't need to read. My feet knew the way. The stone was simple. Her name, her dates, and a line Clara had insisted on back when we were still making choices together. She lit up every room. For once, Clara hadn't been lying. I knelt down and brushed some leaves off the base of the marker. My knees ached. My back cracked. I felt every one of my years and every mile I had put on my body in service to a country that could never hurt me half as much as my own blood had. I took the necklace out of my pocket. The chain pooled in my palm, gleaming softly in the fading light. I had cleaned it, polished away the pawn shop fingerprints, the warehouse dust, the crime lab powder. It looked almost new. Almost. The tiny dent on the hinge was still there. A scar. Proof that something had happened, and yet the thing itself had survived. "Hey, kiddo," I said softly. My voice sounded strange in the open air, like it belonged to someone else. We did it. The wind rustled the nearby trees. A car door slammed somewhere far away. Here, though, by that patch of earth, it felt like the world had stopped to listen. "Julian's not coming out," I went on. "Ever. Dante either. They'll die in those cells. Probably afraid. Probably alone. That's not justice in the way I used to understand it, but it's close enough." I took a slow breath. "Your mom's going away too. 15 years. She'll wake up every day surrounded by concrete and metal and remember the night she picked greed over you. I don't know what's left between us after that. Maybe nothing. Maybe that's what's supposed to happen." Saying it out loud hurt, but not the way it used to. The white-hot rage was gone. In its place was something duller but heavier, like a bruise that would never quite fade. I kept thinking there was going to be this moment, I admitted, where it all felt worth it, where the verdict hit, and suddenly I could breathe again. But it doesn't work like that. Turns out there isn't a version of this where I walk away feeling good about any of it. I dug my fingers into the dirt at the base of the stone, made a small trench with my hand. Then I laid the necklace down inside, the locket facing up. "I carried this for you," I said. "I hunted with it. I threatened people with it. I let it own me for a while. But you're not inside this thing. You're not stuck in that night anymore. You're, wherever you are, it's bigger than all this." I pushed the dirt over the chain, covering it, burying it with her, where it belonged. "I'm not a SEAL on a mission anymore," I whispered. "And I'm not just a father who lost his kid in a headline. I have to be something else now. I just don't know what that is yet." I sat with that for a long time, long enough for the sun to dip lower, turning the sky a washed-out pink. Eventually, I pulled an envelope from my jacket. I laid it against the stone. "It's for you," I said, even though I knew she couldn't read it. "But really, it's for kids like you. There's a scholarship in your name now, Harper Vance Memorial Fund. It'll help one kid every year who wants to do something big and doesn't have anyone to believe in them yet. You didn't get the time to become who you were going to be. Maybe this way, somebody else will." That part, that was the closest thing to peace I had. Not the trial, not the sentences, not the headlines calling me hero dad. It was knowing that a piece of her story turned into something that wasn't just about how she died, but about what she might have done if she'd lived. I leaned forward and pressed my forehead gently against the cool stone. "I'm going to try to be someone you'd still recognize," I said. "Not the guy who tortures himself replaying that night. Not the guy who only knows how to hunt. Maybe I'll help other families who went through this. Maybe I'll teach kids how to protect themselves. I don't know yet. But I promise you this. Your story doesn't end in that living room. It ends here, with me choosing to carry you forward, not just what they did to you." A breeze swept over the hill, soft and warm, like a hand on the back of my neck. I let my eyes close for a second, let myself imagine it was her. When I stood up, my legs were stiff, but my chest felt, if not lighter, then at least a little less crushed. The weight was still there. I was just learning how to stand under it. On the way back to the truck, I stopped and looked back one last time. The stone, the buried necklace, the envelope with her name on it. All of it was small from where I stood, but somehow it held the biggest part of my life. I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. As I pulled out of the cemetery, I realized something. For the first time since that night, I wasn't thinking about what I wanted to do to the people who hurt us. I was thinking about who I wanted to become because of what I'd survived. That didn't feel like revenge. It felt like the start of something that might, one day, almost resemble healing. If you've listened to me all the way to this point, let me ask you something from the bottom of my heart. If you were in my place, carrying this kind of loss and betrayal, what would you choose to do with the rest of your life? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and also share what kind of stories you want to hear more of. brutal betrayals, quiet revenge, family drama, cheating, or something even darker and more emotional. I read what you write, and I build the next stories for you. If this story meant something to you, please gently tap like, hit subscribe, and let me know you're out there, so we can meet again in the next epic, twisted revenge thriller and keep surviving these stories together, one ending at a time.